Hi there, Girl Scout friends. My name is Katie, and I work for the Girl Scouts of Wisconsin Southeast. And I'm going to teach you how to use this. It's a compass. Some of you may have recently received one in the mail, or you might have one lying around the house. So let's find it and get started. This little tool here has been used by hikers and explorers for centuries to find either new or old destinations and eventually make their way back home. So how does this ancient thing actually work? So inside of our compass, there's a needle. This needle's red and black, but yours might be a different color. Now that needle is magnetized, and it sits in a small pool of water which allows it to move freely. That magnetized needle is controlled by the Earth's magnetic field. So imagine, at the very center of the Earth, there's a giant magnet, and that giant magnet radiates its energy all the way into outer space. Now here on the Earth's surface, that energy, that magnetic field, controls things like our compass. It pulls our magnetic needle in various directions, north and south, so that we can use it to find our way. Now let's go over the parts of our compass before we start using it. So like I said, this is our magnetic needle. One end's always going to point north and the other end's always going to point south. You can kind of tell which one's going to point north all the time. Then that needle sits inside of our housing, which is this disc that turns. Inside the housing, that needle sits in a little pool of water, and underneath it is going to be our orienting arrow. We are always going to try and put our north-facing needle inside of that orienting arrow. Now, our housing has all of these numbers and these letters and even these little hash marks in between. So the letters are our cardinal directions: north, east, south, and west. And in between are degrees. There are 360 degrees on our compass because we orient ourselves using our compass in a circle. And there's 360 degrees in a circle. And then in between those numbers are intervals. There's no way that we can put all 360 numbers on our compass, so we break it up so it's a little bit easier to read. This compass has intervals of 2, so every hash mark is 2 degrees. Yours might be different. It might be 5 and it might even be 10. So our housing then sits on our base plate. On our base plate, there's going to be that direction of travel arrow. That direction of travel arrow is always going to be pointing in the direction we want to travel or the object that we're trying to take a bearing for. We'll get into bearings a little bit later. So you're going to also see these numbers on the side on some of our compasses. It looks like a ruler. That's for measuring distance on a map to help us figure out how far we need to go. Okay, let's use our compass. So let's stand up, and we're going to hold our compass flat in our hands, parallel with the floor, about our belly button level. That direction of travel arrow is pointing away from our belly button. Typically, our belly button is going to be pointing in the direction we are traveling, unless, of course, we are walking backwards. So let's find our cardinal directions. We're going to start with north. I'm going to hold my compass at my belly button, parallel with the floor, and I'm going to turn the housing so that the N lines up with the direction of travel arrow. So I'm going to turn the housing so that the N lines up with the direction of travel arrow. You might notice that little notch underneath your housing that will help you line it up. Once my N is lined up with the direction of travel arrow, I'm going to turn my body, not my compass, I'm going to turn my body so that I put the magnetic needle inside of the orienting arrow. So turn your body to put the magnetic needle inside the orienting arrow. Once you have done that, you can look up and you're facing north. Great job. Let's try another one. Let's turn our housing so that the S is lined up with the direction of travel arrow. So we're turning it so the S is lined up with the direction of travel arrow. And just like before, we're going to turn our body and put that magnetic needle inside the orienting arrow. So this magnetic needle is kind of floating around. This side's always going to point north. You're going to notice which one it is. And you're going to put it inside that orienting arrow. Once you've done that, you've moved your body, you look up, and you're facing south. So let's find east. So we're going to turn the housing so that the E is lined up with the direction of travel arrow. We're going to turn our bodies to put the magnetic needle inside the orienting arrow. And then you found east. So let's try something a little bit harder. We're going to turn our compass to 240 degrees. So you're going to turn the housing so that the direction of travel arrow lines up with the 240. Then we're going to turn our body, not our compass, to put the magnetic needle inside of the orienting arrow. And when you look up, you should be looking at 240 degrees. So you can see that our 240 is between the south and the west. We like to add our cardinal directions in so that we get an idea of which way we're going, not just saying 240 degrees. So we're going to say 240 degrees to the southwest. Let's try another. Let's turn it to 120. So turn your housing to line the 120 up with the direction of travel arrow. Turn your body to put the magnetic needle inside of the orienting arrow. Look up and you're facing 120 degrees to the southeast. Good job, guys. You learned your basic directions and we now know how to orient ourselves. So let's learn how to take a bearing. Taking a bearing is how you find the direction of an object from your relative location. Slightly confusing. It just means when you're in that spot, that object is that direction. If you were to move at all, that object would be in a different direction. It will make more sense once we practice. So go find a spot either in your living room or in your bedroom or even outside in the backyard. And I want you to find an object. It could be a lamp, a tree, your dad sleeping in the chair, or the neighbor's house. And we are going to stand in our yard and we're going to point our body and our compass and that direction of travel arrow right at that object. Okay? We're going to figure out what degrees that object is from us. We're going to take its bearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn my housing to put my magnetic needle inside of the orienting arrow. That's it. I'm just going to point at the object and turn my housing to put it in the orienting arrow. So right now, the tree that I'm looking at is almost 100 degrees to the east. Okay, let's take another thing. I'm going to do this bush over here. So I'm going to turn my body and my compass and point my direction of travel arrow directly at the bush. So just like before, I'm going to turn my housing to put that magnetic needle inside the orienting arrow. Just by pointing our body and our direction of travel arrow at that bush, we've already oriented its direction. Now we're going to take its bearing. So turning the housing to put the needle inside of the orienting arrow will tell us that that bush is about 230 degrees to the southwest. So now we know how to use a compass. That's awesome. It's such a great tool to have. Now we can use it for various things, like if we get lost in the woods, we can use it to find our way back. Or if you want to try orienteering, which is a fun game in which you're given a map and a compass and you have to find all of the checkpoints. Or you can use your compass to help find letter boxes that are literally scattered all around the world. So the next time we're out in the woods, why don't you play with it a little bit? When you're out on a hike, stop every 10 minutes and get your bearings. Figure out which way a tree is, which direction you're facing. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you on the trail.